Briggsy, we're all about Red Hat, but customers have got the luxury of choice.
Yeah, certainly.
Without good advice, choice is a burden. So if customers say to us, what's so great about Linux? What do we say?
Well, there's many things that are great about Linux, Phil. The key things that customers are really looking for with Linux is the fact that it's open source. And being Red Hat, we talk about open source all the time, and we kind of just skirt past the fact that some people might not know what that open source means. But essentially, what open source means is the core code for any open source technology is available for anyone. It's up there on the internet, it's publicly available. Anyone can get it, but importantly, anyone can take it, change it, innovate on it, augment it, as long as they're willing to give it back to the community for the next person to come along and use that code. So it's really powerful.
Okay. Well, I like being open-minded, but not open-minded to the degree that my brains fall out. Isn't that a bit dangerous? Just letting anybody get involved?
Of course, there is dangers inherent in such an open model. And that's really where Red Hat started out. So back in the day, 30 years ago, Red Hat recognized very early on that there was a lot of value in the innovation and the capability for this technology to improve capability. But we also recognized that businesses weren't going to be able to embrace that kind of technology unless somebody came as an arbiter of what it was to control the dangers you're talking about.
I get it. So we've got a very broad input into the open source community, but we have a responsibility and the ability to control the output in the interests of our customers.
Yeah, and Red Hat spends millions on hardening the code, making sure it's secure, taking out those risks of security that might be inherent in a really open upstream community, as we call it in the open source world.
Right, I get it.
And we produce a really hardened, what we call downstream version of that upstream open source in the Linux world. And then we allow our customers to use that, and we sell the support capabilities on top of that to our customers. So the customer isn't actually buying Linux from us. They're buying the overall hardening, the maturity, the strengthening, the support relationship, the wider ecosystem who work with Red Hat. So the fact it will run on AWS's cloud, for instance, that's all inherent in the value that we bring as Red Hatters to our customers.
I see. So I know that IT professionals hate surprises, and what we're doing is removing surprises from their life.
That's Red Hat's job. So everything we do is available to engineers, and the world's full of great engineers. Every single one of Red Hat's customers have pools of great engineers inside. But those companies would rather pay Red Hat to do the detailed engineering, to take away the surprises from Linux, rather than have their teams doing all that work.
Right, okay. Now, a lot of our customers are moving to the cloud. I've got a particular interest in AWS.
Yeah.
And you'd think that choosing to host your environment on AWS would narrow choices, but it seems to me like the choices are getting wider.
Always.
Lots of flavors of Linux on AWS. So how do you work out which ones to go for? Some of them cost nearly nothing. Some of them are expensive. There's a range of feature sets. How do you work your way through that choice?
Well, you've been using the phrase choice and saying sometimes choice becomes a burden. It's up to customers at the end of the day. But what we find with the people who work with Red Hat on AWS is that they recognize that even though they can use free open source upstream projects on AWS, or even use AWSs that aren't as sophisticatedly managed and controlled as Red Hat Enterprise Linux, not as hardened, they can use those platforms, but not necessarily all their needs are satisfied by those kind of Linuxes. So they tend to use a kind of mix. So they might use an upstream, say Debian is one of the famous upstream Linuxes, or even use Red Hat's upstream version called Fedora. But they might mix it with something that's more supported, such as Amazon Linux, or in many cases, they recognize as an enterprise, they really want the gold standard operating system of Red Hat Enterprise Linux when they're buying Linux to use it on the AWS cloud.
And I guess some of the workloads that they want to run on cloud aren't supporting all of the Linux choices available, only supporting a certain subset, which narrows the choice in that sense.
Well, that's that key quality that Red Hat provide of the ecosystem of supported software vendors that work with us. So most of the business software that organizations have are only supported on certain platforms.
Right.
And RHEL is one of the industry leading platforms for supporting the most amount of those kind of softwares. So if any organization's using a software that needs a supported underlying operating system, RHEL is usually a good answer in that conversation. Of course, it's not the only answer. You could use different kinds of operating systems, but certainly when you look at Linux, it's the main solution.
Briggsy, you talked about Fedora a moment ago, but I also keep hearing quite a lot about CentOS. What's that about?
CentOS, yeah, that's slightly different. So CentOS was a community project again, so only supported by the upstream community. There was no commercial relationship around CentOS at all, but it was effectively a derivative of Red Hat Enterprise Linux, RHEL. So what would happen was the community would take RHEL code, then build CentOS months after RHEL was released, and then customers who were very price sensitive or whatever might take CentOS, knowing it was built to the exacting standards of RHEL, but knowing there wasn't any kind of commercial support model around it. The thing was, though, economically, that became a difficult model for the communities to sustain. And Red Hat wasn't the organization driving that as a community project. And because of that, it's changed quite a bit. So instead of being after the RHEL release and being a community derivative of RHEL, what's been decided is that CentOS will now actually move into what's called CentOS streams. And that's going to run before RHEL is created. So effectively, it's going to be between Fedora, the true upstream open source Linux from Red Hat. Then there's going to be CentOS streams where partners and customers can innovate, work with Red Hat to test out theorems and ideas and clarify their new technologies. And then that can feed into RHEL as we're building it moving forward. So at the end of the day, RHEL will always be that first-class enterprise Linux option for our customers.
I get it. So as a, how can I put it, a rather safe community version of RHEL, if you like, I presume there was a lot of adoption of CentOS because you immediately see the advantages.
Yeah, very, very well received by that community that wanted to use it. And to be honest, the changes in the approach has disrupted some of that community's thinking. But we haven't done it overnight as organisations, and the community's not changed overnight. They've still got nearly a year to make, in fact, over a year, I think June maybe next year, when they've got to make decisions about how to change. And importantly, if any organisation's talking to you or any customers we've got that might think about this, I would advise them strongly to speak to Red Hat, because we've thought about how we can help mitigate the effects of this change and assist our customers in getting the best out of the new normal.
Great. So we've got somewhere for them to go, especially those customers that are moving to the cloud and are doing that for reasons of a desired business outcome. and will want a hardened enterprise environment, which I guess is going to be RHEL,
Yeah.
we can help them discuss how they make that move from CentOS to RHEL if they're CentOS users.
Yeah, and we can soften the blow in those conversations.
Cool. Good. We've sort of got to a place where we're seeing RHEL as a safe choice, a choice with few surprises. There's a cost involved because those good things come with a price tag.
Yeah, there's a value.
What about the tooling and management relationship with RHEL? Because RHEL is not just, the only piece of software that you'll use in running your workloads. There must be tools around it which are beneficial.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's an extra part. So we've talked about the value Red Hat brings just from a Linux open source point of view. But there's another value, and that's exactly what you're touching on. What Red Hat's done over the 30 years it's existed is expand the management tooling and capability around the platform to take the risk and energy out of our customers' work to get the best out of that Linux. And that involves technologies such as being able to manage RHEL on AWS with our satellite management platform. It includes direct integration to the Insights SaaS monitoring solutions that we have that allow organizations to get advice programmatically from Red Hat about how to best manage their environment. And it includes all the other capabilities we have within our technology portfolio. AWS RHEL Linux is not an island. It can work perfectly well with the Linux that a customer might run in their data centers already, and they just extend their management practices and portfolio out into the cloud rather than run them as two separate pieces.
Got it. Okay. Now, one thing that I do know, and we've been talking about it a lot internally and talking to customers about it, is that the majority of RHEL consumed by AWS customers over history has been consumed in an on-demand fashion through the console.
Yeah.
But we are moving RHEL, and in the future other flavors of RHEL, like RHEL for SAP, RHEL for Microsoft SQL, into the AWS marketplace to bring, I guess, commercial conveniences to customers, as well as the good technical story that we've been talking about up to now.
Yeah, absolutely. Customers can get the technical capabilities today. That marketplace capability is all about making it easier for our customers to buy RHEL. Because from Red Hat's point of view, we don't want to stop our customers consuming our capability if they want to use it on any platform.
Yeah.
So it's in our best interest to make it as easy as possible to buy this technology from that environment. And that's what Marketplace is doing. It's allowing us to make private offers, be able to talk directly to the customer about what they're going to consume on that AWS cloud.
Good. Okay. Well, I think we've got the bones of a good coherent story that our salespeople can talk to customers about.
Yeah.
And that customers can push us for more detail on.
Absolutely, and partners can work with that. It's a very extensible model that we have going to market.
Maybe choice is not such a burden after all.
Maybe not.